Welcome back to the Value Blueprint, the podcast where we uncover the strategies, tools, and mindsets that help leaders build business with real lasting value. My name is James Grieve, and I'm joined today by my co-host, Shayla McLean, and we're thrilled to be joined by our good friend and guest, Trish Miltimore. Trish is the founder of Passion Igniter, where she empowers professionals, leaders, and organizations to engineer and elevate the work-life experience. Burnout is real, expensive, and life-altering, and Trish is here to help us learn how to navigate that. It's also unnecessary. Trish teaches proven leadership and life tools to create momentum and success without the stress and drain, and how to live and work better. Today's conversation is how to lead with care and avoid leadership burnout and build resilience. Welcome to the podcast, Trish.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here. See your faces.
Yay.
Yeah, it's so good to see you. Yeah. Just as we get into it, from the people that don't know you, that are listening to this podcast, tell me a little bit about yourself, or tell us about yourself and what led you to focus on leadership, burnout, and resilience.
So the Coles notes of the Trisha story is I was born and raised in an entrepreneurial family. We have music stores, we manufacture guitars, and an audiovisual company. So from a very young age, I grew up in an environment of founders, really, both my parents. And as I was raised in that environment, I learned that there is a lot of emotional energy that comes along with being a leader, whether you own your own business, you're an entrepreneur, or, as you're kind of engineering your own career. And I learned that very quickly too, at a young age, that energy can either like fuel you or, depending on the perspective, drain you as well. And my mother, she's lovely, but she's Italian and she's feisty. And there are days, especially when you own your own business, or some are a little bit more successful than others. And there were days when I could feel the energy of the stress of it all. And what that does, when you bring that into the home, and just how we are using the alchemy of the many nuanced emotions of the busy lives that we live. So from a young age, that really interested in me. I was very much into leadership. Oh my goodness, leadership was my thing. I was on all the councils. I was emceeing the pep rallies. I just thought the psychology of what it means to be a leader from a geeky young age to be super interesting. What drives people, and how can we be driven in a way that doesn't drain us? And so that was my focus as a young person. And as geeky as it sounds, then I went into leadership training, because I saw a motivational speaker that came to my school in high school, and I thought, wow, like you can help empower people to live better. That's a cool concept. And over the years, since I was 17, and that was when I actually first started my company called Contagious Leadership Training. That was the original name.
Awesome.
That's what I've been focusing on, is how as people can we be the best version of ourselves, but also then how can we help others to do the same? And, it's really definitely, it's evolved over the years, obviously, since I was 17, and through my life experience of, having 4 children and multiple businesses. But at a place now when I'm 46, it's definitely the focus is leadership and burnout and communication. Really, how do we empower our leaders and our teams so that everyone can live and lead better and just enjoy the experience a little more, because it doesn't have to be so hard. That's the Coles notes.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Sorry to interrupt. And you've done such great work with so many different clients in so many different industries. We can't wait to dig into this a little further here. But what, as the work that you've done,
Mhm.
different industries, different levels of professionals, founders, what are some of the patterns you're seeing with people that are burning out, or they're some of the things that lead to them burning out? And what are you noticing that they're experiencing when they're starting to burn out?
And burnout is such an interesting word, because I think it does mean something a little bit different to each person, and depending what phase of life you're in, or what's happening around you. But I've definitely noticed a pattern. Whether you're a seasoned CEO, or maybe you're a person who's just starting out in their career, or maybe you're making a life transition in your career path, the pattern typically looks like you start to feel tired, a little bit less motivated, right? You're just like, okay, I get a little harder to get up in the morning and do what you got to do. And then it just escalates from there. And one of the biggest indicators is the level of this creeping resentment. And it shows up in so many different ways. And the thing is, it's not just professional or personal, because it could be you're burnt out with a relationship at home. And then that creeping resentment is such a drain, and that shows up at work. And that's why we have to treat and lead people as whole people, because you're not one person one place and another person another. You're one person. So that creeping resentment is something I think we need to look for in ourselves. Yeah, we know when that's happening. We just kind of like get a little bit bitter.
Mm.
And comes ebbs and flows, but when it becomes fairly consistent and you're showing up with that narrative of you're kind of pissed off, that could be an indicator that there's a lot of drain going on, and that could be leading to burnout.
Right. And if this is happening, so what are some things that people can do that you can lead differently, or maybe as you as a consultant and coaching them through this, help them lead differently in the process?
Best place to start, I think, is novelty, which sounds kind of foo-foo, but it's not, I promise you. So if you're finding yourself feeling a little bit drained and burnt out, we need to infuse our leadership. We need to infuse our engineered daily experiences. Start with us first before we even try to do anything with anyone else. Some novelty in your every single day. So be curious. Now, how can we do the day differently to feel differently? And it's not always about major transformational change. I think that's where a lot of, like, back to the leadership side, people feel overwhelmed. Like, how can I help people with these big issues or problems when we can just break it down to micro moments? That how can today, in this day, I infuse some novelty, some fun, some moments of, like, I use the F word quite a bit, frivolity, to feel a little bit different, because we can get so stuck in the every single day rut, the same thing. Everyone has the same habits in the morning. You get your drink, your coffee. If that gets messed up, your day is, well, now you're bitter and resentful about that. So we want to, novelty is really key, and it's a tool I teach all the time. Where how can you infuse some novelty into your everyday? What I mean by that is just a different experience. So that could be as big as, go try out a different class, or it can be as small as take a different route when you're walking to work or when you're driving. Like, just the
Absolutely.
smallest pieces of novelty can just shake it up. We need to shake it up a little bit.
Yeah, I love about this, and I'll hand it over to Shayla here, is that a lot of the businesses we work with, we help them get unstuck. But it doesn't have to be like don't wait for this big sticky moment where your business is plateauing, whatever. It's the little things. I really love this. And so looking forward to learning more.
Yeah, and Trish, I really appreciate giving that backstory to our listeners and even listening myself. Um, Now, let's take a step back, because when we initially started talking, you had mentioned that you developed this kind of new framework. And I want to dive into the framework specifically, but can you give a general overview as to this kind of new piece that you're introducing to your clients and people that are coming to you to work with?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the C.A.R.E formula, the C.A.R.E framework, and just how it sounds, C.A.R.E, C-A.R.E. Of course, every speaker needs and trainer needs an acronym, so that,
Yes.
double kicker motivation. But really, where it comes from, I mean, it's nothing groundbreaking new. This is really, I think, many consultants would be able to connect with, where like you said, you see those patterns in your clients, and you think, well, how can I best serve these people, these leaders and organizations with something that they're going to be able to bite into, that's accessible and you can implement easily. And so that's where care came to be. And care is connection, appreciation, it's resilience and energy. And it's the four pillars of looking at how can we include more care in our leadership so that we can help our people then show more care in their personal leadership. So it's a cascading effect, but that essentially it's the acronym CARE, and it's a framework to increase levels of care, but most importantly, increase organizational success by empowering people.
I love that. Okay, let's dive into each one because I've got some specific questions and then I want to ask some general questions because I'm very curious to know each piece and how it relates into leadership. So, starting with connection,
Mhm.
for leaders who feel like they've always kind of been on the go, what does meaningful connection actually look like day to day for them?
Meaningful connection takes kind of two perspectives. One, connection with yourself, because we're just, it's true, we're busy and we're running around, and people have kids and dogs and grandparents and aging parents to take care of. So the first part of connection is connecting with yourself. Like, are you creating space for yourself to have 2 seconds to think, to feel that you're not always reacting, and so it's your job, I believe, it's your job as a leader to create that space for yourself, because
Mm.
nobody's gonna create it for you. And this is something I learned growing up in a family business. It always took precedent, and it need to? Well, I mean, it was many years it was a struggle, and I get that. We're often, we're in the fight, we're
Yeah.
surviving. But the agency of it, as if we're to be professional leaders, right? That having that intention is that we create that space for ourselves, and that can be 5 minutes, it can be 10 minutes. I get it. I get busy. For kids, I carve out, and I'm not the best at it, but because I do this work, I'm often reminded that, 5 minutes in between kids' activities, and I just take a couple minutes to listen to some Eminem.
Mm.
Like, I don't know. Do what you gotta do, right? But create the space for yourself. That's really important. That's your priority and your responsibility. And then, of course, connecting with others is the second piece of that. And again, I just think we can be so busy. In many organizations that I work with, it is survival mode. It is like, okay, what's the next thing? It's building, it's going, it's solving, it's reacting, reacting, reacting. And the connection pieces get lost, being that you're not actually having these one-on-one conversations with your people. And the word direct reports, depending on how big your organization is, but these one-on-one conversations are everything. Yeah,
Yeah.
how can if we don't know the people we're working with, how can we care? How can we support them? So it's a general reminder, because I think we intuitively know this, but we just get off the tracks. Again, the B word. But the connection piece is truly having those one-on-one conversations. And I don't mean like, walking by them and saying, how you doing today? I mean, sitting down, looking that person in the eyes, not weirdly, let's not make it awkward, but
No
actually
need to call an HR.
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want any report. But, like, genuinely ask them how they are. Like, I love this question, "How can I make your busy better?" Yeah, and what is your
Mm.
busy? Because we don't know what's happening with people at home, and they don't have to share their deepest, darkest secrets, and they don't have to share anything more than they want to, but in order for there to be that trust for connection, there has to be time put into it. So, yeah, these one-on-one conversations are really, really powerful and very
I love
needed.
that. I love that reframe too, because I've heard something too. We're at a point where we often ask so much, like, how are you doing or how are things, that we're not even listening after we ask the question. So I like your reframe of thinking of a different question that you can ask someone, or
Mhm.
something where you're actually engaged in the conversation. What would be your advice then for, people that are moving fast, the business is going, and what are some little simple things that they can do with their team to make sure that that connection piece isn't lost?
Just booking in that one-on-one time. I don't think there's any shortcut or any kind of, like, hack or any kind of online program. Obviously, if you have a virtual team, then you're gonna be using technology, but, I mean, it's really just having that conversation and inviting them to that conversation, and by the way, when you do, make sure you specify what it is.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
stressing people out. "I'd like to have a conversation with you on Friday at 4 o'clock. Does that work for
Yeah.
you?"
Yeah. It's like, oh. Yeah.
But and preface it, like, I just need it's important to me that that we know each other, so that we can best support each other, that I can best support you, and so book that time in, make it half an hour. If you can, if you're in person, don't do it in between a desk with the power authority, like, go for a walk.
Mm.
Have it in a coffee shop, like, just use that novelty piece to infuse the energy, and yeah, I I truly believe the ROI and on getting to know your people and intentionally engineering that connection, is invaluable. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. Having worked for small businesses, work with some bigger organizations, the ones that are most connected with their team, I have seen yield the biggest results, and I think it's a testimony to that piece.
Mhm.
Um, the next piece in the care framework is appreciation, and I'm really curious for you to just kind of expand what you mean by that and how you apply it to a leadership setting.
Appreciation came to be because, well, we all know how important recognition and appreciation is. I mean,
Mm.
that's just a given, but,
Hmm.
uh, um, in the last few years, I've worked with a few organizations where the narrative of a majority of the employees was they just don't appreciate what I do. And it was like a cancer moving through the organization. And it happened because of a lack of communication, a lack of connection, and an inability to share with people what was going to be coming down the pipeline or why they're even working towards the goals that they're being told to do. And this whole idea of that I'm not being appreciated was just so toxic, and it was so sad because what I saw was, like, these human beings really cared. They really cared about the organization, they cared about the people they were working with, for the most part, you know how that goes. But, they were just so disappointed that they weren't appreciated, and all that they really wanted for appreciation was for someone to say, I see you. I see what you're doing. You're doing a good job, or even you're not doing a good job. Like any kind of feedback would
Mm.
have been a really powerful thing. Obviously done in the right way. But yeah, so
Mhm.
just being seen, heard, and valued, which is like 101 leadership. But it's unbelievable how many organizations don't appreciate enough. And it's interesting because when I talk to leadership, they often feel they're doing a lot of appreciation. Man, they just bought a new microwave for
Right.
the staff room. Like,
They filled the coffee beans. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, right.
boy, we appreciate. We're so good. But there's a serious, unbelievable disconnect, which I don't believe would have been happening if they were actually having those one-on-one connection pieces or points, right?
Mm,
So
mhm.
appreciation is genuine feedback and genuine words of support and cheerleading, and it builds the trust. It's saying, I appreciate you as a person. Like recognition is included in there, as a side note. Like it's a full piece in a lot of the workshops and whatnot. And recognition takes many different forms. But what I really want to focus on in this conversation is like the actual appreciation, when you actually are, you show people with your energy, your time, and your words that you see them, you value them, and you hear them. That's so valuable. And it's not hard. I mean, for some people it's harder because it's not their communication style. So what I like to tell every leader is, if you think you're appreciating enough, I want you to double it. Double it.
Nice.
Mm.
Mhm. Just over the top. Like genuinely over the top. Tell people more and more that you appreciate them and why you appreciate them. Be specific. And it's not just about their performance, it's about who they are as a person as well. I really appreciate that you show up on Mondays and you have a smile on your face. Man, or I really appreciate that how you speak to the new interns or whatever it might be. Yeah, it just goes so far. Everyone loves appreciation. Kids' faces, when you appreciate them, it's like they bubble up with pride. And I think we have a little inner kid in all of us. Yeah.
I
So
love
good.
that.
Mhm. I like being appreciated.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate you for
Aw,
sure. Yeah.
but the kids do.
No, I love that. And like you said, it's not the big, expensive gifts or bonuses at the end of the year. Like it's those little moments when you just take that 2 minutes to recognize someone and what they're doing and show their value. I really like that piece.
Mhm.
Um, Now let's go to resilience. That's kind of the next piece in the CARE framework. Resilience can sometimes be a bit of a buzzword, like building businesses be resilient, or yeah, like
Yeah.
what are you referring to in this context for resilience?
In this context, it's personal resilience. So, as a leader, are you showing up with your own resilience cup full? And for resilience, it's really about recognizing where you're at, respecting your own energy stores, and by doing that, you're modeling it for others as well, which is important. But your own personal resilience, what is it that drives you? What is it that drains you? Like being aware of all of these. And then by having your own ability to, again, I use the word agency over your own resilience, then you're able to empower others to do the same. And resilience and energy are connected in many ways, because if you're, mm, you know, lacking some resilience, and really it's a skill. Resilience is a skill.
Hmm.
And it's not just something that you say, I'm going to be resilient today, because some days are not very good. Some days are really hard. Some days are, you do not show up your best as your best. And as leaders, we're human, so that's clearly going to happen. But resilience is that deep pattern of intention that you're going to wake up tomorrow and try again.
And
That
so what would be kind of 2 to 3 like practical ways leaders could help build this resilience?
To build resilience in yourself is hard and it
Mhm.
takes that intention, but it's really about grace for self, I think is the first one. So I think it's really easy when you're in a leadership role because the pressure is high. It's hard, right? Everyone's like you're looking to you for leadership. You got ROI to meet, KPIs, you got all the acronyms in your face, Everyone's asking for all these things. It's like, right? And deep down, you're probably like, I don't even know if I can do it.
Yeah.
And but resilience is that deep daily intention to do a little bit better or to keep trying. And
Mm.
so grace for self is really important. So that would be the first one. Resilience is also based on health. So if you are not sleeping, if you're burning the candle at both ends, as they say, it's such an interesting one, and you're not eating well, you're not taking care of yourself, well, that's not being intentional about your resilience because you need those things. So again, it's about are you a professional leader? Are you taking this seriously? And if you are, then you're gonna take care of yourself for your people, and for those who are at home counting on your energy too. And I would say the third one is going back to the concept of frivolity and fun and not taking yourself so seriously and just having a little bit of playtime. Right, how can you be resilient if you're just
So
rocking it really hard?
serious.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
At the end of the day, gosh, because I work with a lot of, as I know you do as well, business owners, founders, and your business is not gonna be holding your hand on your deathbed, and I know that sounds a little bit morbid. It's pretty dark, but it's true, right? It's true, and all that time and all that effort is all for a good cause and good reason, but don't forget to have some fun and frivolity with those you love because that's what it's all about. That's the whole point. Mhm.
Well, going back to that burnout piece that you talked about earlier of, starting to get those feelings of resentment and, drawing on those reasons why maybe you first started your business or the excitement that brought you to this point. When you lose that, it's really hard to find it again. So, like you said, incorporating that play piece and that fun piece throughout will just prolong and help keep you in that healthier state, that resilience piece as well. Yeah, no, that's great. And that kind of funnels into then like the energy part, which is the last section of that care framework, the E, the energy. And I really love that you incorporate this into the care framework because I think it's often overlooked in leadership. What role does it play in kind of how leaders show up for their team, or how have you seen this? Why is it something that you really felt so valuable to add into your framework?
Yeah, there's so many examples. How long do we have? Yeah. Well, I think energy for me is so powerful because how we intentionally, and I use that word intention a lot, how we intentionally show up and share our energy is kind of our legacy. So, and I'm not talking about being super happy and then charismatic person. But showing up with that care in general and that genuine desire to make not only your life better, but the lives of those you work with and the organization as a whole. And the energy you show up with is uniquely yours and it's yours to own, to share. So what I see happening quite often, and it really affects people. I mean, man, people cry. People are desperate for change when the leaders in their lives are not showing up with that level of care or not aware of the energy they bring into a room or a meeting or a conversation. And sometimes it is a conversation where they once they know they do better. Sometimes I mean we like to think that and hope that. But so the energy you bring into a room, what is it? That's the question. That's why I bring it up. And how are you showing up? And are you sharing an energy that is helping people to feel heard, valued, and understood? Or are you maybe not aware, but are you showing up and people are scared or intimidated or don't want to piss you off or you're walking on eggshells? And when people spend that much time every day in an environment where the energy transfer is negative, you're going to get negative results. And I know that's not what you want as a leader because you have results that need to be measured and achieved. So, but I do believe for most people, they're not as aware as they could be about their energy. So why not ask people? Like, as long as you're intentional and you're aware about it, then you can start leveling up, or even just the awareness is so important because some just aren't. And start asking people, like, how does my energy impact you? And if the trust is there, you'll get a real answer. If the trust is not there, you will not. But, you know, we can work on that. Yeah.
What would you be some strategies then that you suggest to leaders to kind of help protect and renew their energy, especially in those kind of demanding seasons?
Mm. Yeah, because some seasons are very demanding. Going back to the
Mhm.
resilience piece, grace for self, taking care of yourself, making sure you do have some fun and frivolity amongst it all, even if it has to be at work, or just, making sure you're taking care of you so that you can show up with the energy that is going to be of service and not send people feeling disengaged, disempowered, or resentful. That's our responsibility.
And I
Mhm.
think responsibility is really key word there, Trish. And so much great information with this care model here. If you had to give leaders one daily practice to incorporate into their business that would have the biggest impact, you can draw from your framework or whatever. Like, what's the one thing that if they start doing this and our listeners are going to love this, but just what's the one thing of that impact? What would it be?
My gosh. Besides making sure you drink enough water, uh,
Yes, that's a good idea. Yeah.
okay, people are not hydrated enough, and I'm not saying to drink how much, those big jars of, or big, whatever they are. My kids have all kinds of different ones. I can't keep up with the
It's a
brands, but
workout and a water. Yeah. Just carrying that around.
I
Exactly.
hear
Yeah.
I hear the comedians talking all the time, like, "We didn't drink water when we were kids, but we were probably just very dehydrated." But, okay, besides drinking enough water and taking care of yourself, I think that just asking yourself this question every day, like, "Why am I doing what I do?"
Question. Yeah.
Why? What is your ultimate goal? Like, not like, and it doesn't need to be, like, overwhelming or like, "Why am I doing it?" It's like, just like, "Why are you doing this every day?" And when you can keep clear on your why, even generally, a little reminder to yourself, then your actions, behaviors, choices, and the energy you share is more aligned with it. Not perfectly, not every day, grace for self, but at least a little
Yeah, I
bit
love
more
the starting
intentional.
with why, because quite often our clients start to think of what or how much or who and that
Yeah.
type of thing. But if you don't have your
Yeah.
why set, it everything else can crumble from there. And it's just
Mhm.
amazing, as you mentioned earlier, without having that fun and frivolity, we get caught up in the minutia of, oh, we're going to meet payroll, or do we have enough sales, or what are these things? Those things will come if you're anchored to with why you're doing this in the first place, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
And we see that. So it's a good reminder for sure. Trish, you have so many great tools you developed on your own, but what's your favorite like leadership tool to teach your clients besides wearing a Hydro Pack?
It's I think the greatest tool is the connection piece. I just think it has the most profound immediate impact and lasting impact. The connection piece of learning how to connect. So, and helping them to elevate their connection skill set and tools with those one-on-one conversations. Because what I've noticed is a lot of people are just scared to have the conversations. It can be hard, right? And we're not necessarily taught that in business school, or when you open up a business, or you're signing those big triple net leases. You're not taught that immediately, but it is a skill that can be learned, and it's very impactful, and it makes a difference to people's lives.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
If I can use this analogy here, what would be the check engine light on someone as they're heading down in their journey, right? As through leadership and they've built this, company, or they're an entrepreneur. What is things, some signals we should look for as we move towards, being aware of, all the indicators you mentioned, or ultimately what could be leading to burnout? What are some of those things we should be watching out for that are showing us that we're maybe heading down a path that we have to have a course correct?
I like that. Well, you say check engine light, and that instantly that check engine light pops in my head, and what I imagine would be, instead of the engine, the battery, it'd be like little fires. Little
Yeah.
teeny fires everywhere, and that would be, I think, the biggest indicator. If you're constantly putting out fires, you need to
Okay.
reevaluate. Mhm.
Yeah. No, it's good advice there.
Hmm. Yeah, I like that. And as we kind of wrap up here, I want to kind of touch on before our listeners to summarize what we're going over. What does a workplace look and feel like when care is really embedded into their culture?
Ooh, I like this. I'm going to say it is lighter, it is efficient, and it's fun.
Mm.
That's how people describe it to me when they're in really great cultures is it's, I like coming to work. You may not love what you do every day, but you like coming to work and you spend a lot of time there. So that's important.
Well, that's so great. And what would be one thing that you hope listeners remember after hearing this conversation?
Besides to drink more water.
We can't say it enough.
Okay, I'll stop. I think if I hope that because I know anyone who's listening to this is probably someone who is intentional, who wants to be or and is a great leader. So that's probably the kind of audience. So I think that reminder to engineer some fun and frivolity because it can be overwhelming doing all this work all the time and to see the results. But yeah, have a little fun. And sometimes we have to make sure we create that because it doesn't just happen. Sometimes
Yeah.
it does.
I love that. This has been such an incredible conversation, Trish. I feel like we could have just gone on for more and more questions. I'm definitely feeling inspired and have certainly taken some time to kind of reflect on how I show up. And I appreciate you sharing all of this
Mm,
information with us. There's so much good content in here that I
thank
hope
you.
people kind of go back and listen to those pieces to really let it sink in more. Now, how can our listeners connect with you outside of this podcast if they're feeling the same as me and want to learn more and want to work with you?
Oh, that'd be amazing. Yes, please do connect. Would love to hear your stories, your insights, or what stood out for you. At passionigniter.ca is my website. And I am on Instagram at passionigniter. I spend most of my time on LinkedIn, and that's Trisha Miltimore.
Wonderful. We'll make sure we link those in the show notes so anyone listening can click into those to find you easily. But again, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. Thank you to our listeners for listening to the Value Blueprint podcast, and we'll catch you again soon. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Trish. So
you.
good.